Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Nye, with co-host Megan Larkins. Hey, Megan, how are you?
Good afternoon. Doing good, Brad.
Good. So today we have two guests. We're going all out today. So we have Randy Kaedar from Illumifin, who is the Chief Security Officer there. Hi, Randy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. And then we have our very own Vanae Pearson, who is our CFO here at FRSecure. Thank you for joining, Vanae.
Thanks, Brad. I'm super excited to be here. This should be really fun.
Yeah, I think so. So what we're doing is kind of our segue is our hobby or topic or something outside of work that we are working on. And so let's start with you, Megan.
Yeah, I've been really busy. So hobbies have been hard because I've been preparing my house to sell, but it should finally go open this weekend. So my work is pretty much done, which is a huge relief. Now I just need some time off to recover. Yeah, so I think mostly I'm looking forward to getting back into playing Magic and getting back to our local game store where I can play the new deck of cards that I bought and haven't been able to touch because I've been so busy lately. So that's what I'm looking forward to anyway.
Nice. How about you, Vanae?
That's a great question. So it's that time of year again. I'm a beekeeper, so it's time to tuck those bees in for the winter. I have all my stuff ready. So Friday night, I'm heading out to wrap my boxes and put my little water resistant container on top to keep the moisture out, and just hopefully cross my fingers and make it through the winter. So that's kind of top of mind for me right now, and I'm excited to put them away for the year.
Nice.
Is it normally this time of year that you do that? Is it right around the 1st of November, or is it?
It's somewhere in here, somewhere in the next month. It depends. The weather's been so nice. I haven't really stressed about it, but I know that it's supposed to start getting colder and colder at night. And honestly, it's a 50-50 if people wrap them or not. They recommend you do, but I know a lot of people that don't do a lot for winterizing them. But if nothing else, they need to be fed a little bit more. And then put some mite resistant tabs in there. So, yeah.
Very cool. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. We'll have to do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, I love it. It's so fun. They're so fun.
And do you sell honey?
No, I just give it away. I used to do it years ago, took time off when I had the kids, and now I just started back at it. And I actually gave all my last jars away last night to my book club friends. So I have none left, but it is an amazing experience. It's super fun. It keeps me out of trouble every now and then.
There you go. Nice. What about you, Randy? What do you do for fun?
Most recently, trees. I'm taking a lot of trees down, as Megan got a glimpse a few weeks ago. Those are all now cleaned up, Megan. They're all stacked and
nice job.
And shucks, I have to go out and buy myself a hydraulic log splitter.
Darn.
Yeah.
Just too many out there. But yeah, mostly putzing around my property, and certainly the trees have been a big part of it. They took down some power lines earlier in the year. So had to take them down. I think there's 14 total.
I will say there's something very satisfying about getting out with a chainsaw and just hacking up wood.
It sounds strange, but that's my happy place.
Yeah, I get it.
And
I think the smell
mark there. That's the most recent remnants.
Oh no.
Of my wood cutting. I've had several injuries over the last year or two.
It's too bad.
It's still my happy place.
So at least that's a minor one, yeah.
It is a minor one. It just bled a little bit.
Yeah.
There you go. So for me, I've been working on a big model of the Millennium Falcon. It's 2 feet by 3 feet. It's metal and plastic. It weighs like 24 pounds. So it's a huge, like, movie detail realistic model. So that's been keeping me out of trouble.
Did
How
you
long does it take you to build something like that?
It's a monthly subscription. So they send you a certain amount each month. So it's like 8 booklets with the parts for each month. Otherwise, it would be just completely overwhelming.
So are you on the first or second month?
Second.
Second month. Nice.
So I'm excited. Comes with a wall mount, so it'll be up on the wall before or when I finish it.
Yep.
How many monthly installments?
12. So not too bad.
So like
All
book,
year.
Out of trouble for a whole year.
Yeah.
so it's like book of the month club. You get
Kind
one
of.
of those every month, and then you put together, display it, get another one. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. It lights up. It's got the engine along the back. It's got electronics and LEDs, so that all lights up. And
Nice. I like that idea.
so, all right. Well, with that, let's get into it, Megan.
Yeah.
Get us going.
So we invited Vanae and Randy here to join us today for a discussion about kind of executives and risk decisions. We were kind of got this prompt actually from a member of our, I believe from Jennifer, a member of our sales team, who really wanted to see us talk and put some things together about educating our IT security folks on how to talk to executives. So I think a lot of the time, the people that we work with, whether it's doing, pen test engagements or VCSO engagements or whatnot, they're the people responsible for IT and security, but not necessarily the decision makers for the organization, and where they often run into trouble or like they can't continue to advance the initiatives or the recommendations that we're giving them to resolve these security issues, sometimes pretty significant ones, is they really don't know how to kind of make the case for security, for budgeting for those security objectives, so that they can kind of educate the executive teams who don't fully understand the risks, and also kind of make that budgetary case for here's why we need funds for these initiatives. So yeah, we've got Vanae from the Chief Financial Officer perspective, and Randy from running IT security programs and really operating in multiple roles and levels of leadership. So I don't know, Brad, you have an idea of where you want to start?
Yeah, I guess, I think that to me, the most common question is, Vanae, what do you need to hear? What do you want to hear? If if Randy were to come to you and need something, what are the keywords? What's the information that you would need?
Yeah, good question. And I would have answered that differently before I was in the information security company, because now it's so obvious. I hear stories every day. I completely understand. And in a former life, it was last one in the room was your security officer. So, it was starting from ground zero and even understanding what your risks were. I do know that now, probably my response comes more from like, how do I talk to colleagues about this? Or when I'm in different associations and they ask me about cybersecurity, I just try to give them context. And I usually start with a story. So the more I can tell them of a story of a company that unfortunately we do all we can on the front end to stop you forever from getting attacked and ransomed and all that stuff. But we know what happens. On the back end, we have the people that come in and help save your business. And what I know, and the story I like to share, is that there's times where we're brought in to help a company that has recently had an incident, and maybe we have to tell them that their business isn't going to be around because they didn't have backups. It's like worst case scenario. And all of a sudden you've got a third generation company that under the newest members' leadership didn't have the proper security in place, and they are no longer in existence. So it's a thing. It happens. We deal with it. I think the more somebody can come to the table and tell me a story or tell me what my risks are if I don't do it, the easier it is to help me build those or make those decisions for money allocations. So I like to rely on those stories, and I've learned so much here just by hearing stories and understanding it. So,
and Randy, from your side, how does that resonate with what you've had to do or what works for you?
Well, so for me, I really do try and make this a shared thing. It's not a security thing. It's not an IT thing. by the way. It's an organizational thing, right? And so for me, it depends on the context that you operate in. So for me, we're in a regulated industry, so we're subject to HIPAA and a slew of state regulations. So our customers, our clients, are big insurance companies, right? Very conservative, brick and mortar, been around forever. They hate risk. They absolutely hate risk. And I get audited or substantive inquiries a couple hundred times a year from our customers. So I have one person whose sole job it is to respond to customer inquiries. I mention that because that's hugely important. My execs, the senior leadership team that I report to, they deal with our customers all the time. They hear this firsthand too. They're in some of the same meetings I am, where customers are pressing us on our controls and so forth. So I can't underscore that enough as an important element of it, because now it's not my thing as much as it is the customer thing too, right? Mm-hmm. So customers are huge. Cyber insurers are huge, especially over the last few years. They have really ratcheted up the level of rigor. They certainly match any AICPA audit I do, and that's just again insurance. So I mentioned those two constituents because they're not tied to me at all, right? I mean, they really are not. So it's an independent view from the senior leadership team's perspective. And of course, that's who we're beholden to as our customers. So those two are big for external relations. And again, that works if you're in a regulated industry that's sort of prone to either litigation or insurance claims around cyber. So those two help. Internally, it's I'm also a big believer. I mentioned the shared responsibility out of the gate. I'm a big believer in KPI and KRI, performance indicators, risk indicators, and they're not my risk indicators. They're the organization's risk indicators. So for most companies, for example, patching is a big deal, right? Supported software is a big deal. And I always tell my senior leaders that I can't defend our actions if we're not showing progress in that area. We don't have to get there tomorrow, but we have to show progress. Mm-hmm. That's important because that provides the CIO or the CTO ammunition he or she needs to get some more funding for software and so forth. So it is, in my mind, about leveraging either constituencies like cyber insurers and clients, or building internal relations with certain groups. The CFO has well, I've been at Illumifin and its predecessors. The CFO has been one of my biggest supporters and someone I've been closest to through the years. We both speak the risk language. Certainly, they scrutinize all my requests, but a lot of the things that advance my program the most aren't actually mine. Again, I go back to the software. Being on supported software, being on not using 2008 anymore, is a huge security risk reduction, right? But it's not my problem. It's IT's. I just need to highlight the problem. So KPI and KRI.
So before we move on, I want to know what that person whose sole job is to answer questionnaires did to piss you off that you did on that job. No.
Can I ask a question, Brad?
Yeah.
So I think about this, and I totally with you, Randy. It's a philosophy from the organization, top down. We're all in it together, and people come to me all the time. They're like, "Well, can I buy this, or is this in my budget?" And I'll be like, "Well, that's not exactly my decision. That's something the whole organization decided at the beginning of the year." So, for me, the hard part and what I try to do is, of course, we manage the risk, but how do you, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, Randy, how do we decide? So you present me something to approve for a budget. How do I know enough is enough? Like, do I want the small, cheap raincoat going into the big storm, or do I want to go spend money on Gore-Tex? Like, how do we know where to put that? And sometimes I think from the CFO's perspective, we come across as grilling you, but we're trying to ask clarifying questions to get to like, how much can I afford in risk versus how much can I afford in money? And I'm just curious, like with your experience and positions you've held, how do you approach that?
That's tough. I mean, because the reality is all of us, back in the early days when we got our certifications or whatever, we learned about things like ALE, right? The annual loss expectancy.
Yeah.
I challenge anyone to find a single organization that uses ALE for security. There's not enough actuarial data out there for me to say if you go with this Cadillac product versus the standard Chevy, that you're going to save this or avoid that. I can't. What I can point to are reductions. Again, I'm going to tie it back to the KPI and KRI. If everyone buys into that set of metrics, right, and they want to see a graph going down, the question is it going down? Does the purchase I'm asking you to make, does that drive that down at all? If it has no effect on it, then you are well within your right to challenge me on whether we actually need it. It's not going to drive one of those important metrics down or up, whatever way we want it to go. That's a challenge, and for my part, I don't interpret the questions as sort of grilling me. I get it. I mean, the CFO has to defend their decisions as well, right? And how did you arrive at the decision that A was okay, but B was not?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like my approach when I was running it and had to present that stuff was, if I don't have the answers for your questions, I haven't prepared myself properly, right? Like I'm expecting those questions, but I always tried to go in with kind of similar to Randy of saying, hey, look, this is the risk. If this happens, this will be down for X amount of time. And this is where the business impact analysis comes into play. It's so important to say, let's just say, backup solution. We've identified that these are the 10 things that our backup solution has to have. We looked at X number of solutions. This is the cost. If we don't have it, we might lose, 10 days worth of data. Is that the extra money worth more than that lost data and the time to manually re-enter it? So try to put it more in a
and I
financial.
Building on that.
You're telling that
rather
story
than trying
too,
to predict
like
forward what the reduction might be.
Yep.
You can look backwards too and say, if we had this tool, we would have avoided X a year ago when we got hit with ransomware. That I think is probably much more valuable to me as a tool than trying to predict forward. Right? There's just not enough actuarial data out there for that.
Yeah. So maybe what were you going to say?
Sorry. I was just pointing out, I liked, Brad, how you kind of outlined that, because it sounds like when you're building the case, you really are trying to tell that story. Like, you're not saying, hey, we need to have a backup solution because it's best practice or we just should. You're saying, here's what can happen if. And so even if it's not like this has happened story exactly, though certainly if you're having trouble getting that buy-in, I think what Vanae mentioned earlier with like read the news. You can find the stories out there. They are happening to companies. They're going under, or they're having penalties, or they're really struggling. But you can start to pull that story together of here's what it means for our organization. Here's what the impact would be. Sometimes it's a little harder to measure or be as clear about, though, because it's a little harder to measure like how an individual resolving an individual vulnerability, for example, might specifically impact your organization, because it's much more of an if. But still, those things exist, and then you're measuring, and I think maybe it's even, I don't know, Vanae, maybe that's a good question for you. Like, if we're trying to say, like, I think Log4j was even a good example from, was it last year or 2 years ago? It was embedded, and sometimes it was going to take a significant amount of effort to get that fully resolved or to upgrade systems so that it wasn't an issue. Like, how do you measure the risk, the kind of potential, maybe it'll happen, versus the amount of effort that it'll take to kind of close that? Are there specific things you're looking for in those kinds of situations?
That is a great question. Honestly, it comes back, for me, it typically goes back to how much do I trust the person that's telling me this information? How educated are they? How grounded are they? Are they looking at it from all different angles? And does it make sense what they're telling me? Is it really, could it potentially be the future of my company? Could it put me down for a long time? So I typically take what that person's saying. And I mean, we work with all wonderful people right now. So I don't even have an example of a situation where I didn't believe the person, but I take what they say and I do try to put numbers to it in my head and say, okay, if it's going to cost this much to get us there, or we think it's going to be this range, what's my loss look like in 1 year, in 2 years overall? And I do that math, and I try to decide, should I be handling this today? Can I put it off? Is the short term, long term? And some of them are it's painful, but you do have to spend the money to get there. So then you quickly start thinking about, how can I shift other things around? How can I move this budget here and that budget there? Because this is a really, really big deal. I can tell by the person that I trust and the look on their face, I need to deal with this. And it can't be something that just goes over my head. And while we have a budget, it's just a guide. That's the one thing I've been in different types of companies, but I've always tried to push, a budget is just a guide for the new year, and you have to zig and zag to get through that year. And sometimes there's something like this, a security breach, something comes up that's so big that everything else gets put on hold. But I think the more that the security teams are aligned with leadership and the philosophies the same, the easier those decisions are. And I don't make decisions in a silo or a vacuum. I leverage my peers and colleagues all the time. And I just have one opinion of many, but I always try to bring those numbers to the table. So relying on the individual and then just doing some real analysis is kind of how I try to make those decisions and recommendations.
That's helpful.
Vanae, would you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Meg.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's really helpful, Vanae. And I think it points a little bit back to even what Randy was saying earlier about establishing those relationships and the importance of it. So
Absolutely.
how you trust and how you've seen that person handle situations is one of your factors for consideration.
Yeah.
And that's the point I was going to emphasize. You had mentioned, do you trust the person? And I'd like to think that I've earned the CFO's trust, and that comes from certainly years of working together, but also I don't sandbag. I do not use FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I don't exaggerate the importance of security or internal controls. And when I do ask for something, I ask it knowing the context of the organization. So are we going through a bunch of employee reductions, for example? Well, now may not be the time to ask for that Cadillac. You'd be surprised how many of my peers I've seen do that, as if security or controls were the most important thing to the company.
Yeah.
The reality is for most companies, FRSecure notwithstanding, security doesn't make them money.
Yeah.
It preserves revenue, perhaps. It may save a little on cyber insurance, but it doesn't make money.
Yeah.
We have to be realistic about that.
Yeah, I think one more, that's a great point. It's always hard to be in those non-generating revenue departments and justify all that you're asking for. But I would say if I were to look at this same question, Megan, that you asked, and trusting the individual, I think the hardest times are when somebody's new to the role. So if you're maybe early in your career, or you're maybe only 3 or 4 years into the industry that you're operating in or the specialty you're in, for me, that's when the flags go up. I'm like, okay, how much do they know of the whole topic and subject? And if I maybe were that individual that was newer or younger in my career, I would always have somebody I trust on the side that's feeding me information that can be my go-to, that I can engage in that conversation with my leadership team, somebody that helps build the credibility. Like, I know what I'm doing about, but I only know this much. And just to double check, I'm going to bring in this expert I have. So I always love to keep like a key person in my back pocket. And even in a CFO role, I have lots of acquaintances I go to for different questions, because it just makes my decision better. But I think it helps me tell my team and explain to my team when I can't, because we can't all know everything. And I think the newer you are into your career, the harder it is to get that trust necessarily, that have built that credibility up. And kudos to you. I entered my career very young, but people were like, what does she know? You know, she just signs checks. And so over time, I had to build those relationships so that they could stand by me when I needed them. And then the trust comes quicker. So I'm more apt to say, hey, do you need to get a consultant? Kind of like what people hire us for. Give me that second opinion, because I trust you, but give me more. And then you can sell me on it pretty easily, as once those two are aligned.
I think it's also really important when you're presenting to like a CFO to, the Cadillac model. The first question is going to be, well, can we go to the one down? Well, yes, but here's what that entails, right? Like, I'm not going to say, no, we can't do that. I'm going to say, well, yeah, we could, but we lose X, Y, and Z. Is that trade-off, worth it to you? Yeah. And just, trying to inform and again, it is building that trust to say, I've done the homework, here's where it is, and we've got options, and I'm informed before I came to you.
I love it when people come to me after they've already anticipated all my questions. So I'm asking them and they have already processed it. I'm like, so well thought out. It makes me feel so good about my decision. You're dead on, Brad, with that one for sure. Love it.
Brad, I'm interested. What are some of the tactics you've used to make that sell for the Cadillac versus the Kia?
Yeah, I think it really was. It is having a decision matrix, right? Here are the 5-10 criteria we have to have. Here are the solutions. Do they have it? Yes or no? And then being able to say, okay, here's the cost. So we can get all 10 of the things that as an organization we've identified that are required, or that these are our wants for this solution, whatever it is. This one costs $100,000 a year for that. Or you can save, this one has 7 of the 10 and costs $80,000. Is that difference sufficient? And then being able to explain, if we lose these 3 things, here's what that means. Mm-hmm. And being able to explain those differences and show that, I've done the homework, that I've done, it's not just one solution. Typically I start with at least 3 to 5, narrow it down to a top 3, and then present and say, here's my top pick and here is why. And here's the cost, the differences and all that. So really, it's like Vanae said, trying to see ahead and being able to come in and say, I know she's going to go, well, do we really need to spend that much money? Because that's your job, right? Like, I get it. Well, I need to be able to defend that decision, or be able to be prepared to explain, okay, the Kia is half the price, but we only get 30% of what we said we wanted. Are we saving? Are we actually gaining anything at that point? Or we're actually spending more to get less, and being able to explain that.
Yeah. Vanae, actually, just follow-up question for you, like kind of going on that, like Brad's had experience, Randy's had experience. They've worked with these CFOs, these executives. They kind of know how to anticipate that questions, but especially if you're either not in a leadership position or you're new to a leadership position trying to make these cases for the first times and maybe don't know your CFO or other decision maker well enough to anticipate their questions. Do you have any tips for them? Like, I even can think of examples like it can be pretty crushing to go in and not be prepared, but to know that hopefully the door is still open to come back, follow up with your research. I know I just, even as a still new leader myself, it's like sometimes you want to just jump all over and try to respond to those, but maybe the best is like, you know what, I haven't fully done my research in that area. Let me get back to you. I'm sure it depends on the person you're working with, how flexible they might be
Yeah.
in that conversation. But.
Yeah, it can be hard. And I mean, first thing comes to my mind is get comfortable with the uncomfortable and go ask that CFO before you even dive in. Just say, I mean, that transparency of saying, it's my first time doing this. I just want to know what your expectations are. How far do you want me to go on this? Even just understanding what I know about the subject is going to help you prepare better and not waste time doing things that I didn't need because I got that or I don't. So I would always say, build those relationships, however you have to do, even if it's right as you're working on a project. Pick up the phone and call. Trust me, CFOs are lonely. We're lonely. Come call us. We want to talk to you. We want to help you make better decisions quicker, faster, and aligned with our thinking and the rest of the organization's thinking. So I would encourage that, as well as I would encourage, again, I said it before, but developing your kind of list of go-to people on the outside to say, I've got this project. How would you approach it? I still do it today. I still have friends and colleagues from years and years ago. I call them up. I'm like, I'm doing this, and I don't know how to approach it. And just that extra thinking is going to really stimulate you to probably produce something better than if you were just doing it on your own and holding up, which I've been there and done that. It seems like it's the right way to go, but honestly, you get there quicker if you engage others. And yeah, I would absolutely do that.
I like that. And I think going back to what Randy has made, like that was something I made a point of is going, if I started a new job or a new executive started, hey, hi, here's my role. I'm going to be presenting these type of things. How do you like to see it? What's going to be most impactful for you? And that's how and that starts building that trust. Because if I come to you, Vanae, and say, hey, what format do you want? Charts? Do you want spreadsheets? What works for you?
Yeah, love it.
It's like, oh, okay. So
yeah, I remember our early on conversations when we were tiny, Brad, and we had some good talks back there at 50 something. Where were we before? Whatever our address was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything, and you were so kind to me, and then you would ask me, and it was a good way to get on the same page, knowing we're all human and we're in it together. So just bringing down those walls right from the start is super helpful. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question, Brad? I think I'll just make one question to Randy, which is, do you think there's specific skills that security or IT people generally have that can kind of help, that they can leverage to better have these conversations?
There's two, and I don't know how prevalent they are in security. I think being working for a Fortune 100 company and being the director of pen testing is one thing. Being a CISO is a little bit different. So I would say storytelling. You've got to tell the story, right? And that's a big piece of it. And you have to tell it with data. And so you have to be able to weave between data and narrative back and forth to tell the story. I don't know how. That's tough to teach somebody. I mean, they have to learn that, and sometimes painfully learn it. But without it, you can't shape your message, and you really are. Even the individual spends into a larger narrative, right? This is the theme for this year, or the theme for this decade, or whatever it is. You have to sort of weave the purchases, the spend, into that story, and you have to tell that story consistently and to as many people who will listen, right? And that's and as I read an article just a week or two ago, and they were sort of coaching some of the hardcore techies. And do you go up the CISO route, or do you just keep going up a specialty path? And the conclusion was basically, if you don't like presentations and you don't like storytelling, don't go the CISO route.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's absolutely true. Because if you don't have those two skills, you won't get the buy-in, you won't get the transparency, you won't get the trust, you won't be able to tell your story.
You're gonna burn out.
Your story, they'll pluck the money away and give it to someone who can.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up. We always end with a shout out. So I'm going to start with you, Megan. Give Randy and Vanae a second to figure someone out. So just somebody, someone, group of people that have kind of really been impactful or done something above and beyond.
I should be prepared for this by now.
I know. I mean, I'm 200 episodes in, and I still am like, oh crap, I got to think of someone.
I don't know. I'm just grateful to my brother and sister-in-law. They came and visited and spent time with our family this last weekend, and made time for our kids to, even in just a short time, kind of build those relationships when they haven't seen them in a long time. The kids were sad to see them go after just 2 days, so I thought that was pretty cool. Plus, my brother-in-law Andy, like, he also like helped put some pictures up on the wall for my son and helped mow the lawn for the house that I'm getting ready. So it was great to have him over in multiple ways.
Nice. All right. Vanae or Randy, do either of you have somebody yet, or should I go?
Have at it, Brad.
I'll go.
All right.
Oh, I'll go. So shout out. My first shout out would be to my husband. He made it across the country with me for 8 days in a vehicle. That's a lot. We haven't done that since before children, which is a long time ago. But that was great. But I want an even bigger shout out. We just got off of a leadership team event last week, and it was absolutely fantastic. Everybody was mature in their thinking, receptive of others, transparent, and it just really, really felt good. So shout out to all of FRSecure's leadership team.
Awesome. All right, Randy.
Mine's pretty easy. My wife, of course. She's been by my side for a long, long time. It helps to have someone who's knowledgeable in the profession, so I can come in and she gets it. I don't know if she always listens, but she nods. She knows what I need, right? I need to unload sometimes, and so she's kind of a voice of reason for me. I can get quite wrapped around certain issues, and she'll back me off on that.
Nice.
And then switching over professionally, I work with a great leadership team at Illumifin. I really do. From Peter, our CEO, who's been in this business for 25, 30 years, to the CFO, the new CFO, the new old CFO. He was CFO when I was hired 12 years ago, and he left, and now he's come back, and so. But our COO, they are all just a stellar group of people. They're very supportive of the program, and very supportive of me professionally and personally. We have a company much like FRSecure, I think, where we often use the phrase "focus on family." Right? If something's happening in your family, you're good about covering, right? Providing the air cover while you go do your thing. I couldn't ask for more.
Nice. Very nice. I'm going to give the shout out to Joe and Luke and you, Megan. Megan for coordinating, and Joe and Luke for jumping in last week and on a last minute, pretty heavy lift that I did not have free time to work on, and it really came in and helped out a lot. So it's awesome when you got sales team and associates and management, everybody's just working together, and everybody, that support is awesome. So thank you, Megan and Joe and Luke. All right, with that, I think we can wrap this up. Megan, what do we have next?
Yeah. So next time we are going to have a really awesome, I think, discussion on API security. Brad, did you know that APIs contribute to 83% of internet traffic today?
Wow, I didn't know it was that high.
It's a lot. And so I think that was just one fun fact that I pulled from the guest that we're going to have. So next week next time we'll be joined by Dr. Baljit Malhotra from Tej Lab. He's an award-winning researcher, and he started Tej Lab in 2019. So I think that'll be a very educational and fun discussion for us to have. And he's got some fun things to talk about, what their organization's doing, as well as an upcoming kind of workshop that they're doing. So it should be good. And then reminder to everyone, our unsecurity at FRSecure.com email is active. I don't think we've had any emails yet, so challenge to our listeners to send an email. You can suggest topics, ask questions, tell me what else I should be doing for my magic game, or point out anything we got wrong. Would look forward to getting your emails.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.